Hello, and welcome to Science with Mr. Morgan. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about natural selection. To start, let's talk about traits, specifically inherited traits to kick it off. Inherited traits are features that are passed from one generation to the next. Examples of this include eye color, hair color, and earlobe style, attached or not attached. Next up is acquired traits. Now these are traits that organisms develop over their lifetime, not what they're born with. And an example of an acquired trait is strong muscles. So anyways, what is natural selection? Natural selection explains how organisms in a population develop traits that allow them to survive and reproduce. Any trait that offers an advantage will most likely be passed on to the offspring, whether that's inherited or acquired. It will become inherited. Individuals with these traits have a better chance of surviving, and therefore a better chance of reproducing, which in turn helps increase the chances of the survival of their species. One example that we can explore involves the giant tortoises on the Galapagos Islands that we talked about in the Theory of Evolution episode. If a short-necked tortoise lives on an island with fruit located at a higher level, will the short-necked tortoise survive? Nope. It won't be able to reach the food. Without the food, it will die from starvation. If the short-necked tortoise dies out and the long-necked tortoises that can reach the fruit survive, over time, only the long-necked trait will be passed down to offspring. And this is because the short-necked tortoises can't pass on their traits if they're all dead. Natural selection occurs when certain criteria are met. Number 1, there is some variation in the inherited traits of organisms within a species. Without this variation, natural selection would not be possible. Criteria number 2. Some of these traits will give individuals an advantage over others in surviving and reproducing. Criteria number 3. These individuals will be likely to have more offspring. Now, let's look at a specific example of natural selection. We're going to take a trip to the Arctic. And while we're there, we notice we have two populations of rabbits. We have white rabbits and brown rabbits. Which one of these is more likely to blend in with their environment? The white ones. Now, why would blending in with the environment be important? Well, blending in with their environment lets them hide from predators easier. Now, speaking of predators, I see a fox heading towards our rabbits. Is it going to go after the brown rabbits, or is it going to go after the white rabbits? It looks like it's going to go after the brown rabbits. If you look at the slides up in the corner of the screen, you'll see that the fox is catching most of the brown rabbits. Why would it be more likely to go after the brown rabbits instead of the white ones, though? The white ones blend in with their environment better, so the fox doesn't see them. If all of the brown rabbits die out from predators like the fox, the white rabbits will survive and are more likely to pass their white fur on to their offspring. And this is natural selection. Anyway, back to species. There are so many species on the planet. Now, even though 99% of the species that have ever lived on Earth no longer exist, there are currently an estimated 5 to 30 million species on the planet. And different species are well adapted to live and survive in many different types of environments. As these environments change over time, organisms must constantly adapt to those environments in order to continue to survive there. If they can't adapt to it, they're more likely to die off. Diversity of species increases the chances that at least some organisms adapt and survive any major changes in the environment. If a natural disaster kills off all of the large organisms on the planet, then smaller organisms will continue to survive. And this is essentially what happened after the dinosaurs went extinct, or I should say the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, and allowed smaller organisms to further develop. These traits being passed on in the form of evolution acts on phenotype. Natural selection, therefore, acts on the phenotype of an individual. It does not act on the underlying genotype of an individual. Phenotype, not genotype. For many traits, the homozygous genotype, like A, has the same phenotype as the heterozygous genotype, like A lowercase a. If both A and A lowercase a have the same phenotype, the environment cannot distinguish between them. Therefore, natural selection cannot select for a homozygous individual over a heterozygous individual. And even if the homozygous lowercase a phenotype is lethal, The recessive allele will be maintained in the population through heterozygous A, lowercase a individuals. It'll still get passed on. If two A, lowercase a individuals produce offspring, lowercase a can be a result and passed on like I just mentioned. Evolution and natural selection can and does differentiate between dominant and recessive phenotypes though. Since natural selection acts on the phenotype, if an allele causes death in a homozygous individual, like lowercase a, it will not cause death in a heterozygous individual like A, lowercase a. The A, lowercase a individuals will act as carriers of the lowercase a allele, which means that it can still be passed down to offspring. People who are carriers do not express the recessive phenotype as they have a dominant allele that takes precedent over it. This means that the recessive allele is kept in the gene pool. But what is a gene pool? It is the complete set of genes and alleles within a population. And I know I repeated myself there a bit towards the end of this episode, but it's important stuff. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Until next time.